is the case that most sellers are going to be driven, of course, by price. They're going to line up all the offers, and of course they want to go with the person that's going to pay them the most amount of money. However, depending on who you're buying from, and you don't really know until you try, if you're not willing to necessarily compete by being the craziest person in terms of how much you're willing to pay, you can offer to be the fastest person to close. If you've taken my advice and you've gone through the process of having your application evaluated, you have that loan commitment letter in place, depending on where you are, you can negotiate for a closing potentially as fast as 14 days. Now, I have to put a caveat in there because one of the main things that we have to do that is the most time intensive is we have to get an appraisal on the property in most cases. That appraisal is going to take time, and the time it takes depends on where you are in the country. There are certain markets that the appraisers are just completely backed up. I recently had a transaction in Florida where we had just a bear of a time getting an appraiser in there quickly. But long story short here, work with your lender to determine what is the fastest time that we can close from the time of contract acceptance to closing. And what this reminds me of is kind of the classic child development psychology experiment known as the marshmallow experiment. The way that this works is that you would offer a kid, you can have one I'll give you one marshmallow now, or I'll give you more than one marshmallow at some time in the future. And especially depending on the age of the kid, there were a good portion of them that they're just like, I want the marshmallow now, forget about the stuff coming later, I want it right now. And there was a group that would take the larger amount of marshmallows later. But what I find in this market is there are plenty of sellers. They may accept your offer for fewer marshmallows than the other guy if you're able to give them that marshmallow faster. You can always offer an absurdly large amount in earnest money, especially if you've already gone through the loan approval process. The amount of money that you put on deposit to secure that contract, if you put more in earnest money than the next guy, that's going to indicate, number one, you're serious. It looks very attractive to know that someone is committing a very large amount of money to see this transaction through. The seller's worst fear is always going to be the contract that they accept ends up falling through and delaying whatever other plans they've got going on. By making a large earnest money deposit, you're going to mitigate that concern, and that will certainly get you noticed when the seller's comparing offers. There are so many people in this market that are looking for that HGTV-esque, gleaming, shiny, newly updated everything house. And because so many people are looking for that perfect, beautiful, updated property, you're putting yourself at a competitive disadvantage by looking at the same properties that everybody else is. To illustrate this point in part, I'm going to talk about the house that I recently purchased with my wife. The first thing I noticed about it is the pictures were less than favorable, let's just say. The second thing, and this actually got me excited a little bit when we toured the property, is that all of the bathrooms appear to have been untouched since they were put in the house built in 1988. We've got some interesting green Formica countertops on the vanity. We've got some shower surrounds that, probably need to be replaced. And when I saw those things in the property and I knew that the pictures were kind of bad, I got excited because I knew that there was going to be a decent percentage of people out there looking in the same area that we were that maybe would disregard this property because it didn't have all the bells and whistles as far as everything newly updated. Hey brother, could you do me a favor? Could you tell these nice folks watching this video to like and subscribe to the channel? It really helps spread this content out to more people. Are you listening? Now, overall, thinking outside the box with your search criteria, it doesn't necessarily need to be about the updates. It can also be the fundamentals of what you're looking to get. If you're having a hard time finding and getting a contract on a property that has 4 beds, 2 baths, is in the exact area that you want and everybody else wants, take a look at some different properties that don't fit that criteria at all. I had one client in particular, I think he only lost out on maybe 6 offers before he found the one. But he was looking at that typical 4-bed, 2-bath, super prime area, and he got a little bit sick of it. He took my advice, he thought outside the box, and what he ended up buying was actually a pretty small home. It was 2 beds, 1.5 baths. And he was in a position where he needed to get into a new house, so he was feeling a little bit of pressure to get it done. But in the end, he was actually really happy that it turned out this way. Not only did he end up at a purchase price that was well below his main search criteria. But he's also got the plan to live in the property for maybe 2 to 4 years and then convert it into a rental. He actually sees it as an asset, that the home is small, it's going to be easy to maintain. The expenses when he transitions to becoming a landlord instead of living there are going to be minimal, and it worked out really well for him. So even if it's just an exercise, even if you don't end up buying a property that doesn't check all the boxes that you want, I actually strongly recommend get with your realtor and come up with a list of homes to tour that are not what you are mainly looking for. Finally, for my last tip, I'm just going to say, if you've been going through this process for a while and it hasn't worked out, you've done everything that you can, I do recommend that you at least consider taking a break, putting things on pause, coming back to this project maybe when the market has settled down. This might be kind of surprising to hear from somebody who's in the business of selling mortgage loans, but given how difficult this market is, I don't necessarily think it would be a bad idea for you to take a break. You know, one of the things I think we're going to see over the coming months is that as the interest rates increase, as they're very likely to continue rising, one of the things that that's going to do is it's at least going to be a factor that applies pressure on prices, maybe, to come down. Fact is, when somebody is looking to buy a house, really what they're buying is not a price, they're buying a payment. So therefore, as those rates go up, and you can actually see on the spreadsheet tool if you've gotten it from me, as the rates go up, of course, the amount that translates to in terms of a purchase price, that goes down. And since most people face at some level a fundamental constraint on the amount that they can afford to spend per month on their mortgage, just know that all of the people you're competing against are going to be affected in a similar manner by this rising rate environment. At the end of the day, higher rates could lead to lower prices, could lead to lower amounts of competition from other buyers. By spending some time and waiting this whole thing out, you may see a rebalancing of listing inventory versus buyer demand overall. You might just be doing yourself a favor by putting it on pause. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you found these tips useful. I'm more than happy to engage with you either on the phone. You can call or text me at the number below. Leave me a comment. I try to respond to absolutely everyone. Ask any questions, even if it's not about the subject of this video. I'd be glad to engage with you there. Thanks again so much for watching. I will talk to you again soon.